obviously just looking back at Virginia Tech, what do they do so well in the running game that kind of tripped you guys up a little bit?
Yeah, I think they had a new wrinkle, something we hadn't seen going into it on film. I thought they executed it really well, and then I really think a lot of it was just our details, and that was the biggest message to the team. Really on the sideline in the V, and then back when we got home today, going back through it, and in the unit meeting and in the position meetings it wasn't really like one thing. It was kind of collective. One time we didn't set the edge. One time we don't finish the movement. One time we misfit it in the box. One time we put our eyes down, we stop our feet, we miss a tackle, and then I still think we got to swarm to the ball better. There's multiple plays where, and I think our guys are playing really hard, but there's a couple times where we don't set the edge, and then we miss the tackle. We got to pin the knees, we got to wrap and roll, we go high, we fall off the waist, and the next guy pulls up or changes speeds, and that's a play we got to make. And now instead of it being a 6 or 7 yard gain, now it's a 10 plus, or now it starts to become explosive. And those are the biggest things that we got to make sure we got to swarm to the ball better. We got to run to the ball, and I think there were some easy fixes and some of the things that got out on us, and we just got to play all 11 guys together on every single rep. And I just think it was at different times. It was one here, one there that we got to get cleaned up.
And then just looking at you can take PFF for what it's worth. They have you graded pretty low in tackling. Is that something that you've noticed? Issues with tackling, mistackling, and how have you guys been working on correcting that?
Yeah, it's something we do tackling circuit every Tuesday and every Wednesday. We work press to hit every day. That's been a major thing starting from practice 1 in spring football. We did it all spring football. The guys did it on their own all summer after lift, and we've done it every single day since camp. That was our worst tackling game of the year. Their backs ran hard. They did a good job. I thought the quarterback was really difficult to get down. A lot of our missed tackles were on the quarterback, and I think, it was the same thing. It's Wes, it's ZP, it's different guys in different spots where I think our guys went for like kill shots rather than taking one more step, throwing their hands, accelerating through contact, or pinning the knees and working a wrap and roll. And we're trying to take the knockout shot, which the quarterback's a good player. I mean, that kid broke a lot of tackles. He extended a lot of plays. And there were times it's 4th and 2 or 4th and 1, and we hit him 1 or 2 yards deep in the backfield, and he falls forward for the first down. Or there's times we hit a guy at the line of scrimmage, and next thing we know, it's a 5 yard gain. And those are some of the things, just fundamentally and technique-wise, we have to do a better job of trusting the fundamentals to play the way we want to play.
Had to play most of the game without Jacoby Thomas. I think I heard Mario said that he's hopefully going to be back for this week. But how did you feel about the group, Bryce, Gill, and the other guys who stepped up there, especially Gerard, Keontae, and OJ?
Yeah, I think Bryce is a guy right now. I mean, you look at him; he's not a freshman anymore. He's played a lot of football this year. He has stepped up in a lot of different situations, and he's played very well. And he's moved around. He's played multiple positions now. I think there were some other guys. Pruitt stepped in and had some really good reps for us. Dylan Day had some really good reps for us in the game. Those are guys that maybe haven't played as much. And we get the naked or the roll pass the one time. We get Dylan off the edge, and that's a play. I think he plays a little bit more. He's going to make that play. We've seen him do it in practice. I think that's a quarterback that makes that play in that situation. That's a veteran guy that's played a lot of college football, and I know that next time Dylan's going to make that play. Or some of the other situations, Pruitt's in a really good spot, and I think now just more reps, he'll continue to get better and he'll continue to make those plays. And we have guys at all 3 levels that I think have stepped up. Some guys have played more as the season's gone on. Some guys maybe not as much, but that's a game on the road late in the season where we have different guys step up into different situations and maybe play more football than they played all year. I thought they handled the situation really well.
The ACC takes a lot of knocks around the country, but when you look at the season as a whole and the challenges that you guys have faced week to week with some pretty good offensive coaches in the league, et cetera, now that you're wrapping up your first full season as a coordinator in the ACC, what are your thoughts just on the league, the offenses in general, and the challenges week to week?
Yeah, it's, you go back through and just offenses that we faced this year. I mean, you look at Notre Dame's offense and where they've gone, the running back, and different things that they've done. South Florida, that quarterback, and how many points they put up every week. Florida State, they've done a really good job moving the football and doing different things. But I feel like every week we've seen playmakers. I mean, NC State's offense, the back coming into that game, and Louisville, some of the guys they've had. But every week I think there's guys that are very dynamic. And I think the offensive coordinators in this conference do a really good job. They spread the ball around. They have some different playmakers. And, it's very different from the conference I'm coming from. It was a little bit different in the Big Ten. In every situation with personnel, with where the different teams were, and weather, and all the different factors that go into it. But I do think the ACC, there's a lot of challenges on the offensive side of football that you got to defend on defense, and I think there's some really good talent, some really good playmakers, and this week's another week where we're going to see some dynamic running backs that have stepped up, a quarterback that is playing really well right now, and some wide receivers that can turn a check down into a big play, or an RPO into a big play. But I think even like last week, the way that they ran the football, and it showed up. We knew in Cal they ran for 350. Florida State, I think they ran for 250. Every week they ran the ball really well, and that was one of the things we knew going into the game. I think we got to do a better job of tackling and fitting up some of those runs. But there's some good players in every team we play this year.
Speaking of, you mentioned the weather and stuff. You're playing up in the cold in Pittsburgh. You're a New England guy. What do you like about football in the cold, and what have you told maybe some of the younger guys who are used to playing in Florida, Georgia, and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's for me, it's never been this way. It's been the other way.
Yeah.
And you come down to the heat, but I don't think it'll be a factor. I think our guys, it's a mentality, it's a mindset. Our guys will be ready to go. They'll be prepared for it. They know what it's supposed to be. But I think if we go out and we just focus on what we can control, and, control the controllables there, I think our guys will play fast and it won't be a factor.
Corey, you touched on earlier about tackling. Going into this game, I assume it's very easy for you to put on the tape from last game against Pitt. Like, if we don't tackle, this is what could happen. Can you speak on? You touched on it a little bit, but just the challenges of what they did with their rushing attack.
Yeah, no, it's the biggest message for our guys today was, like the first thing was, guys, we went up on the road to a very difficult stadium to play in, and I thought our guys handled it right from the start. They have been explosive on play one. Play two, they run like a roll pass. We kind of come out of coverage. We jumped the flat, and then our guys settled down, holding to a field goal. Then we got a fourth down stop. And then after that, we put together a couple of really good stops there. And I thought our guys kind of settled down. And, later in the game, they convert the 4th and 11, and then they had the one drive where they hit a couple of big runs on us. And, I think part of it was after the face mask call. And, our guys just got to respond after the face mask, settle down, respond, hold them to a field goal in that situation, and get off the field. But the message today was, we went up and I thought our guys did a really good job of doing, getting the job done, what we had to get done. But now the little details, the fundamentals, the hand placement, the footwork, our alignments, some of our disguises, those are the things that we got to get cleaned up right now. And that's tackling is the same thing. It's the way that we leverage the football, the way that we press the hip, the way that we work our half-man tackles, our pad level when we strike, taking one more step through contact, understanding whether it's a bite the ball tackle or a wrap and roll tackle. That's going to be the biggest emphasis, even today in the walk. It was every guy, their finish, their hand placement, the way that they were tagging off. Tomorrow in practice, it's going to be the same thing. And, these guys are dynamic. They make one guy miss, and all of a sudden it's an explosive. So we have to be really detailed in our angles of how we're approaching the ball carriers.
They seem to use the running backs in the pass game a lot. Is it mainly just checkdowns, or do they kind of dial it up for their running backs?
No, I think I think the quarterback does a really good job of understanding coverage. I think they do a really good job of scheme. Like you can see in the Notre Dame game early, they get the running backs isolated on some linebackers and get them out in space. There's other games they see a lot of zone coverage and quarterbacks putting the ball in windows and understanding where to throw the football right away. But I think they're trying to find matchups. I think they're trying to understand what coverage it is, and they're trying to do things pre-snap to figure out the coverages every snap. And I think they do a really good job of game planning it. And we got to be really sound, and we got to do a great job pre-snap with what we're doing, on game day.
Just what is the challenge of facing Mason, to what he's been able to do with ability to run and throw, just everything he kind of brings to the table, even though he's a freshman.
Yeah, we got to hit him early, I think. You know, he's a guy that, you know, he came in that BC game and really they played really well on offense. And, you know, it's going to be the same mentality. We're going to stop the run. They get dynamic running backs, you know, no matter which guy's back there. I mean, last week that kid stepped up huge for him. But I think they got a really good group of running backs that are explosive. And, you know, they hit the edges really well last week against Georgia Tech. And then, you know, in the pass game, he looks very comfortable back there. You know, he's looked comfortable running the offense and understanding coverages and taking his checkdowns when he needs them and taking shots vertically when he's had them. He's made some really good throws. And, you know, you can look 2 weeks ago, the game, you know, early that drive, he throws a great 7, you know, kind of goes off the fingertips of the wide receiver, but they have a shot to score in that first drive. You know, they've started hot in a lot of games. You know, last week they're up 28-0 right away. And, you know, we got to get him off track and we got to hit him. And, you know, he does a really good job of escaping things in the pocket. You know, there's not a lot of times where all of a sudden that pocket collapses, and whether he steps up or he steps out, and he makes one guy miss, and then he finds a guy down the field. And like last week, I think he hit the guy in the corner of the end zone, stepping up to the left, had a really good throw on the move. And there's other weeks he understands when to put his foot in the ground and you know, go get the yards he can get, and then get down and continue to move the sticks. And we got to do a great job of collapsing the pocket and getting them off track behind the sticks and hitting them as much as we can.
Maybe specifically with your group at linebacker, the challenges with all the things you just said, with what they have, your group, how do you feel and what you need from that linebacker group?
Yeah, I think we run well. You know, I think that's one thing that, you know, our guys move really well and they're really good in space, and I think that's something that's a strength of ours. And, you know, I think that's one of the ways that we, you know, where they try to get different guys with check downs and in space. I think that's one of the things that is an advantage for us here.